Space whales? Nope, rather deal with devils. Chapter 48, Fan Fiction by Azazyel. Hiro Nakiri was the target of this bounty hunt, and after doing some more research in the area surrounding Kyoto, I realized this was a bit more troublesome than I thought this was going to be. It was actually a major pain in the ass to find him, as we spent hours looking for some kind of warded place, but in reality, Hiro was going incognito, and except for wearing some kind of anti-scrying stuff, he was staying out of the supernatural eye. But just because he was staying out of the supernatural eye, that didn't mean his presence couldn't be found, as we found the jackpot and a tragedy waiting to happen. As Hiro had decided to break the veil of the supernatural and had taken in a gang of delinquents and actually fucking used the blood of the yokai he had been sadistically hunting to give the delinquents always active mana like a trained mage would normally have. Which meant we couldn't just hypnotize the gangsters to wipe their memories, and already as I snatched one of the gangsters off the streets and began questioning him, he was telling us how Hiro was using charms and enchanted equipment to bolster his gangsters to use them as shock troops as he attacked yokai homes. Not yokai like living in the middle of nowhere who terrorized some towns for sick kicks or anything. No, he was literally breaking into subdivision homes, housing simple yokai who lived among humans and with enchanted blades and guns that may have even come from the Vatican, killing the yokai and their families. Alright. So we got the guy's location. But what do we do about these gangsters? I muttered before shaking my head with a sigh, as it really wasn't in my wheelhouse. If anything, I should just bring it up to whoever I deliver Hiro to in the yokai faction. But Mommy pointed out, and if they still go along with yokai hunts to try to make their mana more powerful? I gave the unconscious gangster a look before shrugging and exhaling, with my only response being, then that's for future me to worry about. If they get out of hand, either myself or others will deal with them when they inevitably get put on the bounty boards. Anyway, with the location of the gang hideout, which was the last known location of Hiro Nakiri, we quickly teleported away towards that location using a Citri teleportation glyph, and once we arrived at the once abandoned factory, I grimaced as I could all but smell the blood and despair filling the surroundings, with Mommy even shuddering. Okay. Maybe killing them all is for the best. I muttered as I swallowed down some bile, as this whole location just made me feel ill, honestly. It wasn't like I was a devil walking on hallowed ground or something. No, this place had just been tainted by the amount of blood split and the suffering that was felt here for a good while. Really makes me wonder why no one else came here to deal with him if it was this obvious. I thought as a couple of Hiro's gangsters, wielding short swords that glowed ever so slightly with holy light, yelled, "Tell Lord Hiro that another bounty hunter teleported in." He yelled to a younger guy who had an obscenely tall and spiky mohawk who ran into the factory building. Full lethal, Mommy, I spoke coldly, and I could feel Mommy throwing a look at me, but I didn't explain yet as I conjured up a dozen spikes of ice and then banished them into the charging gangsters who closed in on us at inhuman speeds. Each of the gangsters cried out as they valiantly tried to block the ice spikes shooting for their vitals, but their swords could only block 2 or 3 for one of them. The rest of the large ice spikes rammed home into their chests and stomachs, with the large spikes protruding through their back, but they didn't stop. As I thought, that fucking dumbass is getting into sacrificial magic. These guys are patently superhuman, but they are a ticking time bomb, as their bodies can't absorb or maintain the foreign yokai power and blood forced into them. I thought with utter disgust. Seriously. I could see the cursed purple pulsating heart of the gangster literally spiked onto the end of one of the spikes going through the gangster's chest, and the gangster was still able to charge at me after getting his feet back under himself after taking the kinetic impact of the spikes slamming into him. A loud double crack rang out as Mommy's conjured magical rifles went off, and the 2 gangsters' heads exploded into purple mist, with Mommy saying bluntly, "I see. So they aren't even human now, are they?" I didn't correct her, as these people were already dead, as all my magical knowledge and my gifts for magic were all but screaming that magic and power weren't free. There was always a cost involved, and they had gotten powerful bodies and some kind of yokai brand of Chuki by wasting all their lifespan, and once that yokai energy ran out. "Come on," I spoke with a frown as we made our way into the facility, and we quickly dealt with any mad blood-crazed gangsters lethally and with no mercy until we reached the basement of the facility. Cages. Cages lined the tall walls of the large, obviously magically expanded basement, and I felt bile fill my mouth as I quickly realized Hiro was fucking insane beyond his hate of the yokai. And as I looked into the tiny cages, I saw that a good number of the cages were filled. Filled with yokai in their monstrous forms or were in human forms, with many of them being women and children, with not many men being in the cages. Yes. You saw my genius, haven't you? A voice reached us, and my eyebrow twitched as I heard a German-like tinge to his voice for reason, and I looked across the long factory and saw our target. Hiro Nakiri was a ratty-looking older teenager. He had dark hair with equal black eyes, and besides his rather bland appearance, I noticed what he was wearing. "Why the fuck are you wearing an SS uniform?" I demanded incredulously. But in response, he snapped his fingers and a series of loud meaty thudding rang out as from the back side of the large factory from behind a curtain came 4 massive monsters. No. They were more humans but had been twisted into something that could only be called Lovecraftian, as their limbs were entirely too long and their chests were seemingly hollowed out with their ribs opening and closing like a bloody mouth with the sharpened ribs looking like piercing teeth. Look upon my creations. They were made from the last bounty hunters who didn't see my vision. A world cleansed of the filth of humanity's nightmares. He then dramatically pointed at me and spoke out with that weird-as-hell German-tinged tone. Come. Join in the cleansing of evil that covers this world. I will give you the power you could never have in your mortal form, aha. He finished with a mad cackle. I gave Mommy a quick look as she looked at the man with cold eyes, and I said quietly. Remember, don't kill him. And we need to set the people in these cages free.